looking at section B of the practice test, this section is all solving quadratics. So we had 3 different ways that we could solve quadratics, by factoring, completing the square, and quadratic formula. So we'll look at the examples for each of those. Factoring, most convenient and straightforward way, I think, for solving quadratics, but only works if they work out in factor. So remember, for these, we're looking for something that multiplies to that constant at the end. So here we're looking for something that multiplies to 30 and adds to a negative 11. Since it multiplies to a positive but adds to a negative, that tells us both of these have to be x minus something. And if you want, you can pause for a second while you maybe try to figure it out on your own. But what multiplies to 30 and adds to negative 11 would be x minus 5 and x minus 6. So these are the factors, but we're looking for the solution, the zeros. So what makes x minus 5 equal 0? That'd be 5. What makes x minus 6 equal 0? That'd be x equals 6. So these are your 2 solutions from those factors. Again, here we're looking for something that multiplies to the constant at the end. So what multiplies to a negative 15 and adds to a positive 2? So if we multiply to a negative, we know one of them has to be negative, one of them has to be positive. Since we add to a positive, we want the larger of those factors to be positive. So we're kind of looking for 2 things that multiply to 15 and have a difference of 2. That would be a positive 5 and a negative 3. So our zeros are 3 and negative 5. Completing the square, I think that I gave this to you in the most convenient form. Remember, completing the square is the one where we're filling in this blank so that it factors into a perfect square. And to find what goes in that blank, we do half of b squared. So we look for half of negative 8, well, that's a negative 4. Square that, and we want to add 16 to both sides. But if we add 16 on the left, we have to add 16 to the right. So we have x squared minus 8x plus 16. This factors into x minus 4 squared. And 16 plus 16 is not 36, 32. When we factor this piece in here, this x minus 4, that's always going to be half of the b. Okay, so half of that negative 8 is what's going to be inside your parentheses when you factor. So then we finish this by taking square roots. So we take the square root on both sides. The square root of x minus 4 squared is going to be just x minus 4, plus or minus square root of 32, which we can simplify. 32 is 16 times 2, so that's going to be a 4 square root 2. So plus or minus 4 square root 2. Add 4 to both sides, and x is going to be 4 plus or minus 4, plus or minus 4 square root 2. I guess a real quick similar example, let's say we had x squared plus 14x equals 10. We would take half of 14, that's 7. 7 squared is 49, so we would add 49 to both sides. That left side factors into x plus 7 squared equals 59, and you would finish solving that by taking square roots and simplifying. So that's completing the square. Quadratic formula. You'll need to have the quadratic formula memorized. So that's opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we just plug in those pieces. So x equals opposite of b. So opposite of negative 16 is a positive 16, plus or minus the square root of b squared. So 16 squared is 256 minus 4, A is 1, C is 7, all over 2A is 1. So 16 plus or minus square root of, what's that going to be, 256 minus 28. So is that 228? Won't help if you try to tell me if I'm wrong. I may have made a mistake there. But finish that one up by simplifying that square root. It looks like a 4 probably goes into that. So you'd be able to pull out the square root of 4 and then reduce everything by a 2. So you'll probably have 16 plus or minus 2 square root of whatever might be left in there over 2. And I think that'll be then 8 plus or minus, those 2's can cancel as well, so square root of whatever that